Welcome to Careers in Publishing, a panel hosted by the University Press of Florida as part of our Fall 2025 Publishing Symposium. My name is Jenna Colasari, Metadata and Exhibits Manager at the University Press of Florida, and I will be facilitating this session. This panel brings together publishing professionals who began their careers as interns at the University Press of Florida to discuss their own career paths and offer perspectives on getting started in publishing. We hope that you will come away from this panel with a sense for the variety of career paths that can be found within the publishing industry. And now a few pointers and guidelines for this panel. This webinar is being recorded. The recording will be available on our YouTube channel, Florida Press. After the webinar, registrants will receive an email with a link to the recording. Closed captioning has been enabled. To view the closed captioning, please click on closed caption in your meeting controls. Please submit questions for the panelists through the Q&A throughout the presentation, and we will address questions as time allows. I will now introduce our panelists and ask them to turn on their screen. Each person will share why they first became interested in publishing, what their experience was like interning at the University Press of Florida, and what their current role involves. So our first panelist is Angelica Fabro. She's currently an editorial assistant at the University of Georgia Press.
Hi, everyone. As Jenna introduced me, I'm Angelica Fabro. I started my position at the University of Georgia Press in June of this year. I was an acquisitions intern at UPF for the calendar year of 2024, so from January to December. For my internship, I was basically helping the acquisitions editors prep manuscripts before they went to EDP, or editorial design and production. I was helping to maintain project records in Ian, coding manuscripts, as well as sending out letters for new books and things like that. And it translated pretty well to my job now. So basically what I did as an acquisitions intern, I'm doing now at UGA Press, or University of Georgia Press, as an editorial assistant. I do a bit more writing internal business memos, more interactions with the authors, but it's still a pretty good one-to-one comparison. I started publishing because I realized while I was doing my PhD that I didn't necessarily want to be a professor, but I really liked academia and reading scholarship. And my school had a workshop about academic publishing, and the leader of that workshop suggested to look for internships, and that's what I did, and now I am here.
Thank you so much, Angelica. Our next panelist is Andrina Fernandez. She's currently acquisitions editor in Gender and Sexuality Studies, American Studies, and Latin American and Caribbean Studies at the University of North Carolina Press.
Hi, everybody. Pleasure to be here today. As Jenna said, I'm at the University of North Carolina Press, but I started my career in publishing as an intern at UPF back in 2020. So you'll forgive me if I don't remember all of the details of my day-to-day, but I was an acquisitions intern. And I did, I think, very similar things to what Angelica described. I was definitely answering a lot of, or sending a lot of declines on the general email, and doing a lot of cast-offs, like checking word counts and things like that. And generally doing a lot of the kind of behind the scenes, small tasks that I ended up doing when I started at the University of North Carolina Press as an acquisitions assistant. I was at UPF from January 2020 until like August 2020. And so I did like 2 months in person, maybe a month and a half. And then we very quickly switched to remote because of COVID. So it was a little bit of an unusual internship experience. And I figured out along the way how to do it remotely, but it ended up being like an extremely useful experience, and it has translated like so clearly to my work today. So that's me.
Great, thank you so much. Our next panelist is Heather Ha. She's currently a marketing associate at Cambridge University Press.
Jenna. Hi everyone. I am Heather. As Jenna mentioned, I am currently working in marketing for Cambridge University Press. I interned at UPF in 2021. I think I did 2 semesters of internship in the marketing department. And I was a marketing design intern, so I helped with creating some of the banners for the website, some graphics for social media, things like that. And then I think some email work here and there. It feels like it's been forever. So that's, I think, the general main things that I was helping with. And yeah, I ended up just landing the job with Cambridge University Press, and I also work in marketing with Cambridge. So a lot of the things that I did in UPF really translated over right into what I am doing now. I would say the biggest difference now is that since I'm not an intern anymore, I'm the one making decisions rather than asking at the time my internship managers, whether I'm allowed to, whether this is okay or not. Now people are coming to me to find out if that's okay. And that was a big shock to me when I first started. But yeah.
Awesome, thank you. And our final panelist is Kat Wynn. She's currently the publications editorial coordinator at Library Press at UF.
Thanks, Jenna. Hi, everyone. I'm Kat. I am the publications editorial coordinator at Library Press. I was an intern in the editorial design and production department, the EDP department, back in the summer of 2021. It was in person, but I think a lot of people were still kind of hybrid or remote. So it was very quiet and kind of an odd experience, but it was very fun. So when I was interning, I assisted the managing editor of the EDP department in checking soft and printer proofs, doing proofreading, copy editing. And then I think I also learned how to code and index a little bit, but I don't really remember much of it. And I also did occasionally write some copy for acquisitions as needed. And my experience at UPF, I don't really do too much copy editing in my day-to-day here at the Library Press, but my experience with UPF as an EDP intern was kind of vital to the roles that I've held in my time to getting here. And that's kind of what I do.
Awesome, thank you all for sharing. Now I'm going to ask some additional questions. Feel free to jump in and answer as you feel fit, as you see fit. You don't need to answer in any particular order, and not everyone has to answer every question. So I'm going to start with a question about skills. So what do you think is the most important skill that college students can develop to prepare them for a career in publishing?
I guess I'll go. I think one of the biggest things is being curious and being able to ask questions. I think especially with publishing, there's so many moving parts, and you might work in one department, but it's all going to cross over, and you might not know the ins and outs of every single little department, and you aren't expected to, but being able to ask questions to be able to understand and be on the same page and work across multiple teams is really important in publishing, I think.
Yeah, I think bouncing off of that, it's really important to also be open, just open to learning new things. And I think for me, that something that has been important for me is open to critique. So if somebody, especially in editorial work, if some people edit different ways. So I think being able to be open to critiquing and learning, keeping your mind open is really valuable.
I would add I think I don't know if it's necessarily the most important skill, but it surprised me how many like people skills I needed to have in order to work in this job. Um, I think the image that often people have about working in publishing is that you're like just like writing away, editing away all the time. And I think that is like rarely what I'm doing, at least in acquisitions. But I do think like communication skills are hugely important across the publishing industry. My work in acquisitions is extremely relationship driven. I am constantly communicating with people about their projects, about what we do as editors and publishers, talking through the publishing process. So I think learning to communicate really clearly and effectively, both over like writing and also like spoken, is like so much more vital to my day-to-day work than I necessarily expected it to be when I first started. And I think the same goes for like internal communication as well, like being able to communicate effectively with my colleagues.
I think one more thing is time management and figuring out how time management works for you. Because there's a lot of deadlines that you have to hit. And all of these different projects, so you really have to figure out how to prioritize and then figure out how long certain tasks take you so you can plan accordingly.
All right, thank you guys. So I'm going to ask a question that some of you kind of touched on, but if you have anything else you want to add to it, how did your internship prepare you to work in publishing? Like, what skills or perspectives did you gain that served you well as you transitioned into your first permanent position?
I guess I can go first. So as I said, the task I did as an acquisitions editor translated well to going into sort of the beginnings of acquisitions editing as an editorial or acquisitions assistant. So the internship taught me how to get used to Slack because I never really used it before. So I'm really grateful for that because UGA Press uses Slack a lot. That's usually how I get most of my tasks for the day or throughout the day. Also, it helped me get used to learning different kinds of software. So at UPF, we used Ian to keep track of projects. At UGA Press, we use Biblio. Not the best transition, but at least I knew like, okay, I some of the names of different places were similar, and just getting used to that software as an intern helped me do that here. And then also one more thing was thinking about books and book projects as a publisher rather than a scholar or a student. I think that was something that the internship prepared me well for, because when I went in, I was just like, this person's proposal sounds great because I love their research. And then the editors are like, wait, there's so many other things that go into thinking about if a book project is good for a particular.
And just to clarify for anyone who doesn't know, Ian and Biblio are both title management systems. So
Yes.
it's a software used by the press to kind of keep track of the titles that they have forthcoming and in print and so on.
Thank you.
I can add a little bit more about the kind of experience. I think the biggest thing that I learned at UPF that really, I think, set me up for success when I started as an acquisitions assistant at North Carolina was a understanding of like the life of a book and how you get from an idea of a book to the product at the end of like our job. I had truly like no idea what that looked like before I started at UPF, and all of the like little things that happen behind the scenes. So I think I gained a really deep appreciation for how all of those tasks come together to create a book. And it helped me like onboard more easily to my like first job in publishing, because I had something to kind of base the things that I was learning at this new job off of. So, you know, I might have been sitting in on meetings at UPF that maybe they had a different name, but they had a similar function. And then I could say, oh, okay, this meeting that I'm attending here at University of North Carolina Press is kind of like that meeting I went to at UPF, or this title management system. Having just kind of a point of comparison made it a lot easier for me to, I think, pick things up a lot faster, because, you know, I had to learn all of the details of these new systems and processes, but I understood like the big picture of, you know, what I was trying to help with and what we were trying to get done, what my responsibilities might be, things like that.
I think from my experience, what the skill that I kind of learned the best was kind of, this might sound silly, but it's reading through academic text. Sometimes, especially when you're doing copy editing and line editing, it can get really dry and boring, because I think when I started my internship, I really wanted to go into fiction publishing. And so when I started in academic publishing, I was a little nervous and scared, because I was like, oh, I don't want to be bored at work, you know. Um, but I think I over time I learned a real appreciation for it, and you kind of learn how to read holistically, while trying to edit line by line, but also edit the whole piece.
Mine is a little bit of a turn from all of your guys' positions since it's marketing, but for me, my internship, I think, really set the foundation for me in like not just my career in publishing, but just as my marketing career in general. Um, we for the designs for the website and stuff using like Adobe, Canva, different like design tools to be able to create graphics and kind of decide what works and what are the best tactics and ways to reach people. I think my time at UPF really set the foundation for that, and that carried over into not just my career at Cambridge, but just other marketing positions that I had in between. So yeah.
All right, thank you guys. So another question, internships can be competitive. What advice would you give someone who has not obtained an internship? Are there other ways that they can build skills or gain experience? Things that like they should look into or try to learn that might help them land a job in publishing?
I can speak first. So I think for me, I ended up pivoting kind of into publishing kind of late in my college career. I think I did it halfway through my junior year. I was originally on pre-med, so it was a very different track. And I think for me, what I would say is it's really important to keep your options open. Like I said earlier, I wanted to go into fiction publishing, and I was like, you know, I'll just give this a try. Um, I think if you're willing to put yourself out there and try something new, good things will follow is kind of my mindset, you know. And I think it helps after my internship. I also try to push myself to get involved in other campus opportunities. Like I know if you're a student at UF, I was involved with the T Literary Arts magazine. So I think that's a really great opportunity to get involved in things like that. Even small projects help.
Um, I think I don't know if I have like exact advice for this, but I think something that was helpful for me when I was like applying to jobs and trying to think about how to like frame my skills was thinking about the experiences that I do have and how those can translate to the work that I'm doing in publishing. So it's not always obvious, but I think, you know, even things like working at a restaurant or doing like service industry jobs can have a lot of really applicable skills to what we end up doing in publishing. Like Angelica was saying, like we're managing a lot of different priorities and trying to figure out like what to do, how to like, you know, decide what to do first. As I was saying before, a huge part of my job is like relationship building, talking to people. So like having any kind of job where you're having to communicate, you know, difficult things or complicated things can translate to the kind of work that you end up doing in publishing. So I think it's some of it is also about trying to understand the role that you're applying for and how you can um, think about your own experiences in a way that would translate to this new position. And I think you could do that also like as you're trying to decide other things to get involved with to prepare you for publishing. Like it doesn't have to be about books for it to prepare you for a career in publishing. And I had no idea that publishing was like a career. I didn't do anything in undergrad, any like related to literature like at all. I didn't end up getting a internship here until like my last semester of my master's program in gender studies. So it's like not, I wasn't doing anything like related to it. But I think you can find your way um, through other kinds of like non-traditional avenues. It doesn't always have to be like a very linear path. And a lot of times like employers will also appreciate that, like if you're able to connect your like varied experiences to the work that you might do at their organization.
I would also say that being a student really does give you a lot of the skills that you would need to sort of get your foot into publishing, especially through an internship. So as Andrina was saying that, like if you look at what you have to do as a college student or a graduate student, what have you, you can frame it to say like, oh, I already have these skills and I can do it in this particular work environment. In terms of applying for internships, I would just say, just keep trying, and really do be open for other opportunities. And when you're applying for those publishing internships, a lot of the presses do like when you mention like their catalog, like say, oh, like I'm familiar with this particular book and things like that, because it shows that you're doing research about where you're applying to.
Yeah, I would say that what Andrea was saying about that it's not always linear is really important. And just, I guess everybody was saying how just be open to opportunities. I know sometimes when you have your eyes set on one industry, you tend to want to look for things that are specifically in that because you want it to directly link over. But sometimes, you know, that just isn't going to be the best option. And just because it's not directly linked doesn't mean that it's not going to be applicable. Especially like for me, my experience, I interned at UPF, and then I went on a little squiggly career journey and I worked at a library and then I worked for USTA in tennis, and then I ended up back into academic publishing. But I was able to use those experiences and skills that I got from those other positions to relate them into my job now. So yeah, just be open to opportunities as they come.
Great. So this is something that some of you have kind of touched on, but like how did you find your first full-time publishing position? Like, can you just describe a little bit the job search, the application process? Did it go smoothly? Was it more squiggly lines? Just anybody who wants to say anything about that process.
I can go since I just touched on it a little bit. But yeah, after mine was definitely very squiggly. I did an internship in my junior to senior year. And then I think I did like a startup internship and then I graduated and then it was like post-COVID. So everything was a mess. But I ended up working at a library for a little bit and then USTA in tennis marketing. And while I was there, I think I was just constantly looking for opportunities, like always looking at what is available on the market. And how I ended up finding my position, I honestly would just, one of the things that I did at my internship that I think Rachel actually had me do was kind of look at other presses and get inspiration from their marketing and their posts and things like that. So I just went back and did that again, and I would just look up university presses and I just looked up the university presses and then I found Cambridge and I found a like marketing position that was open and I applied. And I honestly did not think that I was gonna get it, but here I am. So yeah, it was just I don't know, sometimes it is just right timing. So I would say just always kind of keep an eye out and see what there is out there and kind of search. I know LinkedIn is really big, but sometimes companies don't post on LinkedIn. So going directly to company websites and kind of looking through their stuff, I feel like was what worked for me.
I could go next. So, for me, I actually got really lucky. The libraries were looking for a student intern, and they usually put calls out to UPF first to see if they have anybody that they recommend. So I was, my name was put in, and so my first, well, it was a student job, but I was a student assistant in the Department of Digital Partnerships and Strategies, which is really it encompasses what I do now, which is the library press at UF and the Digital Library of the Caribbean, DLOC. And so I was doing student internship work. And then when I started that my very last semester of college. And then when I graduated, they were able to keep me on. And then eventually they liked me, so they wrote a position in for me with DLOC. And so I was with DLOC for almost 2 years. And then things at the press here changed a lot. We lost a lot of people, and so we were down to one employee, which was who is my boss now. And they were looking for my role now, which is to manage the open access journals program. And I had worked with Tracy in the past, and I didn't really know much about journals, but I really pushed my experience that I gained in all of my other roles. And I was able to get where I'm at now. But I think definitely for me, without this internship, I would not be here today.
I definitely wouldn't be doing this if it wasn't for the UPF internships. I got this job, my job as an acquisitions assistant at the University of North Carolina Press. I got in September of 2020, which was like a hard time to get a job. And when I was graduating from my master's program in like April, May of 2020, it was an even harder time to get a job. It was like, there was one day there was 100 jobs on every major publisher's website, and the next day there was zero. So it was kind of like a long summer of applying to, or not even applying to that many things because there wasn't that many things available, but applying to anything I could and not getting them. And eventually the timing worked out. The University of North Carolina Press was looking for a new acquisitions assistant. And I had been with UPF for like 8 months. Stephanie Hunter, the editor in chief, was an intern at the University of North Carolina Press a million, like, I don't know, like a bunch of years ago, and at the start of her career, and connected me to the people there. And I think that was like an in that really, really helped. And so I think like using your network is like always good. Like they told me that job was available, and they helped me like get in touch with people. And um it's not going to get you the job, but it like might get you in the door, and that makes a big difference, especially when a lot of these places are receiving so many applications. So I think it was like luck, but also like having also really great mentors at UPF who were like really, really supportive and trying to help me break into the industry. And then, I've been with UNC Press for like a little over 5 years now, and the kind of progression of my career has been also a lot about just like trying and getting lucky, and you know, trying not to be too afraid to like go for an opportunity. And yeah, I don't know. I guess that's that.
I would say my current position was mostly based off of luck. At the end of my internship, I was just like, I'll just try and apply because I was really thinking I wasn't going to get anything for a while. I think I applied to a handful of university presses for an editorial assistant job. And how I got this job, well, let's see. I would say that it was a lot of networking. The editors at UPF were pretty close to the editors at UGA. And also I interviewed for press before, and then when I didn't get the job, the editorial director was just like, there's a new job coming up. It's at UGA, you should try. And she was just like, do you want me to put in a good word? And then I was just like, I wasn't sure at first, but then like, I was just like, okay, why not? Let's try it out and see. And that's how I ended up at my job. So I would say I was pretty lucky. But I was also prepared for the worst of like waiting for a while to get something.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for sharing. So just some thoughts about your current roles. Can you guys talk a little bit about the publishers you work for now? Like what kind of presses are they? How many people in your department? How many books per year? Just some information about like the different presses that you guys are representing now, and maybe any significant differences from UPF that you've noticed.
I can say a little bit about UNC Press. In terms of like what we do, it's pretty similar. Like it's an academic press, university press, that's acquiring in a lot of like humanities disciplines. But UNC acquires or publishes about 100 books a year, 110. In my role as an acquisitions editor, I acquire about 20 books a year. And the department is about 12 people in the acquisitions department. I think the press as a whole has something like 70 employees. But yeah, I think overall UNC is significantly bigger in terms of staff than UPF, at least when I was interning. And that's, I think, in large part because in addition to the books program, there's also a journals program. We're also a distributor. There's like an organization called Longleaf, which is like kind of part of the university press, UNC Press. And so there's like also their employees, and yeah, so I think bigger organization. I'm not sure how many books UPF publishes a year, but I think probably less than UNC. And in my role specifically, I acquire in gender and sexuality studies, American studies, Latin American and Caribbean studies, and Indigenous studies. So it's a lot of humanities kinds of work, history, interdisciplinary work, lots of like professors' books. Yeah.
I would say it's pretty similar with Cambridge. I would say from UPF to Cambridge was a big jump in the size, and I guess the overall market, since Cambridge is obviously in the UK. So we have a global team and audience. So that was a lot to take in when I was first starting, especially since I was just used to kind of focusing on like Florida alone. But in our academic marketing specifically, which is what I'm in, I think we have about 80 people in our team. And then within the smaller subset of higher education marketing, there's like 7 in my team. So I focus specifically on textbooks. So I cover the earth science and linguistics textbooks, but there's so many other branches of products within Cambridge. So that was something that I really had to get used to, just like all the different sub brands and all the different audiences, like educators, teachers, students, all the things. But it has been really nice to be able to kind of be able to get little bits of each area. And with Cambridge being focusing on a global market, we have different headquarters all across the world. So getting used to different time zones and people in different areas and like working around those schedules has been really interesting, but also really rewarding to be able to know that I'm working with someone in Australia. And if I email them today, I'm probably not going to get an email until the next day over. And yeah, just being able to like get to know like different cultural differences too. Like Cambridge obviously is very old and based in the UK. So most of the team is British or somewhere in the UK. So learning their lingo and understanding them at first when I first started was a whole new experience in itself. But yeah, it's just been differences in like the size and the amount of people I have to work with and the amount of different products as well. Luckily, I just focus on my textbooks, but there's a wider range, I would say, of areas from journals to online courses, things like that, that Cambridge does that I know of, but don't touch as much. So
For me, I think size is also a really big difference. So I work at a library press, which is really, really tiny. I work out of the UF libraries, and so our press is just 2 people. It's me and my boss. And so we publish a lot less. So we publish maybe 4 to 5 projects, I think, every year and a half. Our projects start from kind of the idea phase. So a lot of our authors come to us without anything. So we kind of work with them along the way. And so the way that we publish is very different because everything we publish is open access. So we don't do a lot of print. We do a lot of digital publishing, so we're using platforms like Pressbooks. Sometimes if it's appropriate, we will do InDesign work and put together like an EPUB or a PDF. Actually, it's through Pressbooks. And so it was a really big difference moving from UPF to the library press for me. But because the UPF team is pretty small, I feel like I was already used to how small things are, but here it's even smaller. And I think I was going to say something else. I forgot. Maybe if I remember, I'll bring it back up.
I would say that UGA Press and UPF are fairly similar in stack size. I think UGA might be a bit bigger. I think in total, including interns, there might be 30 across all of the departments. For acquisitions, there's 5 of us, and then maybe 7 or 8 of us, including interns. And then for UGA Press, we publish about 70 books a year. I think it's slowly creeping up higher than that, but yeah, that's the numbers so far.
Awesome, thank you guys. So we want to ask, this may answer a couple questions from the audience. If anyone has any resources that they found particularly helpful as they've navigated their career. So whether it be like websites or things like that, just anything that you found helpful as you were kind of learning publishing and growing into like a career professional in publishing.
I do have a couple of resources. The first is called Paths in Publishing. And I can drop the link somewhere. Oh, okay. Somebody's already done that. And they're a really great organization for like early career people or people trying to break into the industry, to get connected with people who are already working in the industry, and they like answer questions about working in publishing, things like that. So that's a really good resource. If you're looking to work specifically in like university presses, the Association of University Presses website also has a job board and some resources about working in or about publishing, which are, I think, useful to keep track of. And I also, before I got the job at UNC Press, I was applying to some like trade publishing houses and stuff too. And there are like various different resources like people of color in publishing, and I think there's like a Latinx in publishing, and maybe a few others that can also be useful. They have their own job boards and things like that. And it might be like nice to even like follow some of those on social media, or some of the people who organize them on social media, to kind of just get like immerse yourself a little bit in that environment. So all those things were super, super helpful. I think for working in acquisitions specifically, I did there are some books that I like read, or at least like read some of, that were helpful. Like there's a book called What Editors Do that I think is like pretty good to help understand what the job is. And yeah, that's all I can think of right now.
If you're also okay with doing being involved in journals, the Society for Scholarly Publishing, so SSP, is a pretty good website. Even though UJ doesn't have a journals department, I still follow them pretty closely. They have a early career interest group that meets probably monthly or so. And then sometimes they'll each meeting will revolve around a specific subject involving the job, so you can learn more about what different people in publishing do. And it's also a pretty good way of networking, because I believe there's also a mentorship program for SSP as well.
If you're interested in library publishing, Coalition is a great website and great resource. And I think for something a little bit more general, stalk LinkedIn. I think LinkedIn is a great resource. It's a good way to find the people who work at the presses that you're interested in and kind of see what their interests are. And it's a great way to kind of cold email people, cold message people, just to get to know like what they're interested in and how they got there.
Yeah, I would say I think you guys covered most of it, but I think going off of what Kat was saying, kind of having an eye on the different presses that you're interested in and like different industries that you might want to get into, and kind of giving them a little stalk and keeping an eye on those, like signing up to the email list, things like that. I think that's all really important to do as well, just to stay alert.
And I'm going to highlight just a couple more things that we're going to share. So our colleague Amy Sherman, she's an acquisitions editor at the University of Pittsburgh Press, and she's put together an early career resource guide for book publishing and editing. And we're actually going to share that in the email that goes out with this recording. So there's a lot of websites and links probably to some of the things we've already talked about. Like she talks about the AUP, the Association of University Presses, and the website and the job board. She talks about past and publishing. She talks about a lot of other things. So that's definitely, it's something that you can look up, but it'll also come with a link in the email with the recording. And there's a lot of good resources in there if you're looking to kind of get into scholarly publishing. So I want to ask a question. What surprised you most about working in publishing? So whether it happened when you were as an intern or it happened later in your career, is there something that you like didn't expect to be doing or didn't expect to be done the way it was?
I think what surprised me the most, and maybe this is a Cambridge thing, but it really surprised me how long everything takes. I think as an intern, we saw like the tail end of it. We were told like the life of a book and things like that, but actually living it and seeing like the idea of the book coming to life, the initial talks with the editor is like that situation, having it presented and then into contract and then publication and like production. I was not ready for how long some books take and how much it varies depending on the authors as well. So yeah, I think I was just surprised because part of me, I think like the marketing side and working with sales, I'm like, we need to get this done. Let's do this, this, and that. And then it's like, well, we're still waiting for the second draft or whatever it is. And I was like, oh, okay, I'll just wait, I guess. So that real timeline, I think was what kind of shocked me and how much it can vary because there's some people, some authors that are like, yeah, done, here you go, here's the next one, boom, and then it's out into the world. So that variation in things really shocked me.
I think for me, it was all of the different roles in publishing. There's so many weird little niches that you can find yourself in. Um, I mean, like for me, library publishing, I had no idea what that was. I had never heard of that. I was like, why does a library need to publish things? So I think for me, it was really keeping understanding how niche all of the roles can be and how unique everything is. And I think how quickly the industry grows, especially in academic and library publishing.
I would say something that that could be encouraging for college students and graduate students is how much help these authors get to make a good scholarly book. Like it's going through like peer review, and then these people are giving suggestions, and then the author's taking them into consideration, and they're revising a lot. So if you ever want to think any of these, if you guys are students out there and you think like, oh my God, all of these people are like crazy brilliant and they can just write a book in like a year or whatever, they can just do it in one setting or one draft. That's not what's happening. You can see all different forms of writing, but it does come out great at the end. And I would also say that something that surprised me was figuring out something that Andrina said earlier is like the people skills, having to deal with very different demeanors on any given day. You'd have to really learn how to like manage your emotions at times just to keep relationships cordial and things like that.
I think like everything about working in publishing surprised me. I didn't know really anything about it, but I feel like I am surprised every time I learn anything about publishing. And I think it's because there are so many different ways to publish a book, and like there are so many different kinds of books that get published, and um, publishers function in so many varied ways. And I think one, like maybe the first extremely surprising thing that I learned about, at least related to university presses, is like the way that they relate to their university. Like I at UPF, the university press is like directly enmeshed in the university, and I think like you go through the UFHR and stuff like that. But other presses function in other ways and have different kinds of relationships. Some presses are like part of the library, or part of other parts of the university. At UNC, we're like kind of an affiliate of the university, so there's like all of this behind the scenes like business aspect of things that can really, really impact like everyone's day to day, and the way that the publisher operates, like the way that we can publish books. That is like continues to surprise me. And I think that's true like at big trade houses or independent presses as well. Like as much as this is about like putting out great ideas and putting out really great books, like these are all businesses and they have to function and keep their doors open, and there's just a lot of different things that go into that, which has been continually surprising and extremely interesting to me.
Thank you guys so much for sharing. So what have been some of the challenging aspects of working in publishing in general? What have you found more challenging?
I think this was touched on a little bit in the last question, but the amount of different people that we're working with and different characters and personality when it comes to, for me, like editorial to sales to authors and things like that, especially in academia as well. I think there tends to be a lot of people that are, experts in one very specific niche field. And you have a call with them and they expect you to be an expert in this very specific like science or whatever it may be, and I'm just like, I'm just the marketer here. So being able to manage different relationships amongst internal stakeholders and external ones, and kind of manage expectations as well. I think there's a lot of people who are, maybe it's their first book or things like that, and so they want the Met Gala of promotions for their book because it's so important to them. But being able to kind of balance the realistic approach that we're going to have to take and what authors want is a little bit difficult at times. So just one of the many examples of being able to navigate different relationships and different moving pieces within the press, I think is a challenge, but yeah.
Going back to something Andrina mentioned earlier about, how the relationship with the university, at least for the libraries, we're very entrenched with what happens with the university. And, Florida likes to do its own kind of thing here, politically speaking. So I think what happens there and how that affects the university affects a lot of the work that we do as well. Especially since the library press, we work everything that we do is open access, so there are no costs to the author, but library budgets affect our budgets and things like that. And then also kind of some university mandates or statewide mandates that affect our work. So like a big one that we've been working on is accessibility. So with the upcoming Title II revision, so we've been working a lot on learning accessibility and kind of getting our editors on board with that, at least in the journals program, which is difficult too, because I know they're always juggling 1,000 other things.
I think sort of now with the current, I guess, cultural and political climate, sort of seeing how like politics and things does affect the press and affect potential projects. I knew that that could happen, but like actually seeing it and experiencing it is something that's very different. Like now I really have, yeah, it's like thinking about authors, thinking about readers, like, and all of these other things like can greatly like affect how long a project can take. Things have sort of slowed down. And then something else that's challenging. I would also say just in general, like when I transitioned from internship to full-time work, was just managing my mental energy. Because the internship, you have like a certain amount of hours for a certain number of days each week. But then once you start expanding to like what is it, 8 hours for 5 days a week, I was just like, oh, this is different. And I had to like figure out ways of like surviving through the day, and trying to plan certain tasks during certain parts. Yeah.
I definitely agree with everything everyone has said. I would say in my role as an acquisitions editor specifically, I feel like something that has been really challenging is like working with a lot of people who are experts on things and not being an expert on those things, and still, you know, figuring out how to talk about, people's projects with them, but also like be okay with being the person who doesn't know something. Like I think I struggled a lot, and I continue to struggle with like moving from being in academia and like studying and trying to like learn the most about everything, and um, just like switching to a role where I get to learn a lot about things, but I get like pieces, right? And so oftentimes I am like having to ask questions or having to have things explained to me, and like still trusting that I can like do my job like as an editor when I'm talking to people who have been like working on a project for 40 years, and are like explaining something to me, I think can be like a big personal challenge. Um, and then also like uh, managing that along with like the million other little tasks and little processes that I have to do day to day, and understanding like the publishing process and being able to like explain that to people. I think something that Heather said was like sometimes like it might be somebody's first book, and like for them it's like their whole world, and it can be like really challenging to have to be the person that's like, I understand, but like, there's only so much I can do for your book. Like, and these are like the ways that we have to approach things, and this is like the procedure or whatever. And so, um, yeah, a lot of like the people skills, I guess, continues to be a theme for me.
So one other thing that we think is worth mentioning is that oftentimes pay in publishing tends to be lower than many other industries. And there's been more attention paid to this in recent years. There's a couple of good resources if you're looking for information. Publishers Weekly releases an annual publishing industry salary and jobs report. Pass in Publishing, they also make available a pay database for university presses. So if you're looking for information, those are a couple of good resources. And we're almost out of time, but I want to give everyone a quick second if you have a number one piece of advice, caution, or encouragement, very brief, that you want to share with anyone who's considering a career in publishing.
I think again what I mentioned earlier, be open to opportunities, open to critique, open to learning. And I think it's also important to stick up for yourself. Sometimes authors kind of want to run over you and don't want to listen to you. I think especially when you're new in the industry, a lot of times folks will treat you like, oh, you're new, you don't know anything, but I think it's important to stick up for yourself and to make sure that you're working with people who will be in your corner too.
I think, yeah, I like totally what Kat said, and I think like staying curious about things, staying open to all the possible ways that your career might like move in directions you don't expect, and trying to approach that with like curiosity. And I think like asking questions like really can get you a lot. So like don't be afraid to ask questions. Um, and don't be afraid to like be somebody who doesn't know something, because if then you can learn. And I think that people can really appreciate that. So yeah, and definitely the pay thing is no, it's they're not joking. The pay is not great. So if that's important to you, maybe just think about that.
I would also say, be friends with people in the other departments and like talk about projects together, even in their different phases, because it really helps in the long run. If like they know about like how authors interact with you, or like, oh, we might want this thing, like talk among the departments. Just don't wait until like meeting time to do all that. You can sort of do it in free time and things like that.
I don't know if we have time for anything else, but ditto to everybody. But also, yeah, I think just being open, staying curious, and just getting used to the fact that you're going to be always learning. The industry is always changing. There's always going to be something new that you didn't know before. So just get ready to constantly be learning, which is fitting for university presses. But yeah.
Well, thank you so much to our panelists. That's all we have time for. To our attendees, if you would like to be notified of internship opportunities at the University Press of Florida, you can click the link in the chat to sign up for our internship interest list. It will also be sent to all the registrants in our email next week. And we'll also include links to the publishing career resources that were mentioned in this panel when we send out the recording. The recording will be available on our YouTube channel, Florida Press. The link will be sent to all our webinar registrants next week. The next session in our symposium, Publishing Careers Meetup, takes place at 4 p.m. Eastern. This is a networking session geared towards students interested in publishing careers. University Press of Florida staff members representing acquisitions, editorial design, production, and marketing will be available to chat with attendees. If you're a student and are interested in attending, please click the link in the chat to register. On behalf of University Press of Florida and today's panelists, thank you so much for attending.